What can we expect to see at the scrimmage this Saturday? Or more appropriately, what can we expect to hear about?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the AHSA Radio Network. That's me. Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I'll tell you about Gametime in just a bit. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Thank you, everydayers. And we welcome our newbie overlords. So, Jimmy, scrimmage this Saturday is coming up, and it's going to be a big one. And it's going to be something that we're going to see some or hear about, because nobody's going to be able to be there. We're going to hear about some guys that have stood out and maybe some guys that are going to need a little work. But what are you most looking forward to finding out about this scrimmage?
Assuming that we're able to find out stuff, there'll be a very light crowd. It's not like previous scrimmages where there's been a lot of invitees where things leak out. I don't anticipate that being the case at all. So no media attendance is allowed. Now, Kalen DeBoer will meet with the media following practice. So he's going to share his thoughts about what happened and, maybe or maybe not stats. We'll have to see. But in terms of what goes on, even if we're unaware of what goes on, I think grasp of the offense and defense is first and foremost. We have to remember this is a new offense and a new defense that's being implemented. So the players have to fully understand it. I don't know that they will in scrimmage number 1. I think it's more imperative that scrimmage number 2, which is the following Saturday, they need at that point to be ready to play a game, even though they'd be 2 weeks away. But I think just simple grasp of the offense and defense. So really it's on about 3 guys, Luke. It's on Jalen Milroe to run the offense. Jalen's got to know the offense and run the offense. Defensively, it's on Deontay Lawson in the front 7. Deontay's in charge of the front 7 in terms of getting everybody lined up and knowing what to do. Deontay's the coach on the field there. And in the secondary, no doubt, it's Malachi Moore. And I think now people can now see there was some criticism about playing Malachi back at the back end instead of up at Husky near the line of scrimmage. This is why. I mean, this is ideal Malachi. This is Malachi helping the defensive secondary get lined up right and everybody knowing the scheme. The good news for Alabama fans is Jalen, Deontay, and Malachi are all very bright guys, and there's a good chance that they have a good grasp on what's going on the offense and defense. But that's the question for me more so than specific position battles, but we'll get to those.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily into position battles. I want to see position performance. Like I want to hear about not just one wide receiver, but maybe 2 or 3 wide receivers sticking out. I also want to hear how the defensive backs look. I mean, in their first real action. I mean, we know Zabian. By the way, there was a great video. I say great video. It's sort of grainy. It was almost a Zapruder film. I think that's how you say that. It was kind of grainy, but Ryan Williams makes a great one-handed catch. I would like to see. I like to hear about more than one wide receiver. Like I don't want to just hear about Jeremy Bernard. I want to hear Kendrick Law did something. I want to hear Ryan Williams did something. Anybody that made another move on the wide receiver unit. And I want to hear about, hey, the defensive backs were stingy today. Those are the 2 things I really want to hear about.
No, I think that would all be great news, no doubt. And I would like to hear all of those things too. And very possibly we will. I think position battles, there's still a few out there ideally someone runs with it. Ideally someone makes it not a battle. Someone's like, okay, there's no battle there. This is the guy. Is that happening at right tackle between Wilkin Formby and Elijah Pritchett? Is Formby just winning that in a runaway? What about the corner spot? Luke just mentioned the Zabian Brown deal. Zabian's playing with a little cast on his hand. I can't help but wonder if that affected that play that we watched with Ryan catching that ball over Zabian. Zabian, you could see, if you watch real closely on the tape, you could see that little club on Zabian's left hand. But Zabian is making a run at first-team corner, but he's having to fend off fellow freshman Jalen Mbakwe. He's also having to beat out junior Deshaun Jones. So those position battles, and there's others. Those are. I think it would be ideal, Luke, if we heard or found that whoever's winning that position battle is winning it by a long shot, and the coaches are building trust in those guys.
Yeah, that's very fair. I also would like to hear that the backup quarterbacks look pretty good. Look, I feel like we've got a strong pecking order. I mean, it's Jalen Milroe. And somebody in the comments recently said, it feels like everybody's just giving the job to Jalen Milroe except the coaches. I'm like, the coaches have given the job.
The coaches have given the job to Jalen Milroe.
This is Jalen
DeBoer.
Deal with it. I mean, I don't know who out there is still not accepting Jalen Milroe, but deal with it. He's the quarterback.
Kalen DeBoer has made it extremely clear. Yeah, DeBoer has made it extremely clear himself that Jalen Milroe is the quarterback of this football team. And at practice, that's one thing that there's just no question about when they do things in an order and in line and who the first team. As a matter of fact, I have seen the first team do various things on offense. Jalen Milroe is with the first team on every single snap. Now, when they scrimmage on Saturday, for instance, I fully expect Ty Simpson to get some snaps with the first team because Ty's got to be ready to play. Jalen's a turned ankle away from Ty Simpson being the quarterback of this football team. So Ty will get some scrimmage type snaps with the ones for that reason, but there is no competition going on at quarterback. It's Jalen Milroe 1. It's Ty Simpson 2. There's no competition for the backup spot. It is Ty Simpson by a mile. Now there is fun competition, I think, for the third spot because I don't think it's settled between Austin Mack and Dylan Lonergan. It looked like Dylan was ahead this spring. It looks like Austin is ahead this fall. But I think there is a legitimate battle there between those two. And it is interesting because you're talking about the future of the program there.
It's always a sticky wicket because you wonder, all right, if you have a great play on offense, is your defense bad? Or you have a great play on defense, is your offense bad? Whatever. But I will say this, I definitely would love to hear about a breakaway run from a running back. I was thinking about this today for whatever reason, that when I look at our running backs, they're all, pretty weighty, strong. I mean, weighty's a bad word. I mean, they're built really well. They're all kind of like fire plugs. I mean, Daniel Hill, a little bigger than the rest and taller, but nobody really strikes me as like a home run threat. I would like, and maybe they are, and we just haven't seen it. But so therefore I would like to hear about, hey, Jam Miller went for 68 yards on one carry today, or Justice Haynes went for 52. I would like to hear something about that.
I think it's possible. I'm not sure based on what we've seen. I would call those home run guys. I'll tell you who will be one day is Kevin Riley.
Yep.
I don't think he's going to play a ton this fall because he's the fifth guy right now. Put it this way. I think we will see multiple touchdowns from Justice Haynes and Jam Miller in the 40 to 50 yard range.
Okay.
I think they could house it from there, but I do think it's a good, fun point. Are they the type of back that can score from 70? I don't know. I don't know they have that level of sprinter track speed that it takes to get that done. Now, so much of it is the blocking. On a play like that. I mean, Derrick Henry is really good. I mean, who looks at Derrick Henry as a home run hitter? But guess what? He did at Alabama. I mean, he scored.
He's done it everywhere. I mean, he
scored 99 yards on the NFL. Yeah, that's right. So,
but you know what's weird about that? Here's what's funny about
speed.
That. If you go, I do randomly go back and watch that. I remember where I was when that happened. That was I believe it was a Thursday night game. I was at my old house in Ellick City, and I was just watching my bedrooms. Like, I had Derrick Henry on my fantasy team, and I was thinking, God, they got it. I mean, hopefully they'll give him the ball right here. And that wasn't he found a crease and burst through it. He stiff-armed people the entire way down. He actively sought out people to stiff-arm and embarrass on the way to 99 yards. And he still was going about 20-something miles an hour. It was ridiculous. his athleticism, I'm going to say this again for the 1,000th time. We always talk about Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson when we talk about greatest running backs in the SEC. Derrick Henry should be in the conversation. He just should. But
the numbers are the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, just
Yep.
look at the numbers, and I'm not diminished when Luke props up Derrick Henry like that, and I agree with what he's saying. It's not diminishing Herschel and Bo. It's
No.
propping up Derrick Henry.
Correct. So, Jimmy, your guys over at On3, they came out with their projections for the CFP field, and I can't wait to get into this. But I also can't wait to use Gametime again. I told you the other day I used Gametime to buy my Wisconsin tickets, and I got a great deal. My other three friends that are going, they were like, this is much better than we thought we'd pay, and the seats are fantastic. And, if you're a first-time user of Gametime and you use that app, which is fantastic and easy, you can use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $20 off your first purchase. And, you just can't beat that. Look, on top of it all, Gametime's customer service has treated me so well. I needed them one time because you shouldn't need them much. That's the whole thing, right? I needed them one time. It was kind of my fault. And they took care of it immediately. And I was so surprised and happy because, you deal with other things like this and you're like, when you got to talk to a person, it's a problem. Nope. They helped me immediately. And I was so thrilled. Gametime is the perfect app for you to go get your tickets. You will love Gametime. I do. I've used it for World Series tickets, college baseball, college football, college basketball, NBA, NFL. I've used it for everything. So go check out Gametime. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off that first order. Also want to remind folks to go check out Locked On College Football. Spencer, the host over there, great dude. I've been on the show a few times. I know Jimmy has. Part of the Locked On Network, your team every day, and they got college football covered from every angle. And they talk about Alabama a lot. So go check out Spencer and the crew with Locked On College Football. So, Jimmy, they've come out with On3 has their college football predictions, playoff predictions. And I'm just going to run them down very quickly.
Hey, who did this? Is that a JD Pickle? JD Pickle?
It is Jesse Simonton.
Jesse Simonton. Okay. Well, I just, obviously we have a pretty large staff, and I was interested whether this was JD Pickle or whether it was Andy Staples or Jesse. Jesse does a lot of national writing.
So I'll just run down 1 through 12 because the first 4 are going to be considered the champions of their respective conferences.
Conference champions.
1 is Georgia, 2 Ohio State, 3 Florida State, 4 Utah, 5 Texas, 6 Oregon, 7 Bama, 8 Ole Miss, 9 Michigan, 10 Notre Dame, 11 Missouri, and 12 Boise State. The first thing that sticks out to me, 5 SEC teams: Missouri, Ole Miss, Bama, Texas, and Georgia. That would cause Danny Cannell's head to explode, but I can see it.
That'll be worth it right there, right?
Here's the other thing that would just be kind of awesome. It would be Bama, Notre Dame in Tuscaloosa for that first round game. The winner moves on to play Ohio State. Now, the guys at On3 go ahead and predict the winners, et cetera. And Ole Miss welcoming in Michigan. I think that would be one fun game to go to. That place would be bananas. Missouri would be going to Oregon, and Texas would welcome Boise State, obviously. Now, you guys over at On3, I know you don't have anything to do with it, but they came up with Georgia and Ohio State ultimately being 1 and 2, and Georgia winning it all. So I just love seeing these projections, and I love thinking about the potential matchups here. Alabama.
Who would you root for in the Georgia-Ohio State game? Because I know you're famously anti our rivals, and I think most people listening to the show would be anti-Georgia. I tend to be more anti top of the Big Ten myself, particularly in a year where Ohio State has been, let's just say, very aggressive in their recruiting tactics. I might lean more towards Nick Saban's guy, Kirby Smart there.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I'm typically pro SEC. And I'm because I'm like, hey, it's good for us, right? It's good for the league. It's more money. It's everything. It's more exposure, brand. That being said, it's really tough. Just the way that my interaction with some Georgia folks at the various games has been difficult, and I've never had a problem with Georgia in the past. I still don't really have a problem with Georgia the program. I'm kind of happy for them, but the fans have been sort of difficult to deal with at times. And the cockiness we have dealt with from time to time has been something else. That said, I can tell you, for those who know me, I've got some children that live in Columbus, Ohio. And if you think Georgia fans are cocky, at least Georgia's won national championships here recently. Now, Ohio State won one in 2014, and they beat us for it. And congratulations. We got revenge in 2020, obviously. And Georgia has beaten Ohio State since then, too. It's two pretty egomaniacal fan bases. And I say this as part of an egomaniacal fan base myself.
Right. Yeah, we're going to get accused of that.
and we, again, as I've said it 1,000 times, when we've been the best program in the country over the last 16, 17 years, our arrogance is earned. Now, the bottom may fall out, and all of a sudden, if that happens, I probably need to go, we need to check ourselves.
That Georgia-Ohio State game would produce a lot of Alabama fans on both sides. I think there'd be a lot of Alabama fans for Georgia. I think there'd be a lot of Alabama fans for Ohio State. I've just been a little turned off by Ohio State in the past year in particular. But hey, I do pull for some of those Georgia kids. Hey, I'm pro Jake Pope.
Hey, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. Caleb Downs would be an interesting, lightning rod, right? Because would you pull for him as a former Bama player?
No, I've been adamant about. I just said I'm pro Jake Pope, and I'm pro Roydell Williams. I'm for any player that left Alabama because they had a better situation elsewhere in terms of playing time. I get it, support it, and pull for those kids almost as if they were still playing for Alabama. Almost. Any kid that left in search of snaps. Starters that left Alabama, I feel completely different about. Alabama provided them everything. Alabama provided them ample NIL money, and the stage to compete at the highest levels, premier coaching, premier facilities, premier fan base. Alabama offered starters everything, and some chose to leave. And you can call me petty over it, fine. But I am a little, butthurt. Is that what we say on social media? I'm butthurt over Downs, Bond, Knobloch, the Alabama starters, even Earl Little to a degree, who I believe would be starting had he stayed at Alabama.
Yeah, I get that. I'm not as, I know I got a master's degree in pettiness. I hate the Braves because they used to supersede Space Giants on TBS. So back when I was a kid. So yeah, I know about pettiness, but I don't know. I'm not anti Caleb Downs. I'm more anti Isaiah Bond because I feel like, dude, I guess he got a Lamborghini out of it. I'm trying not to hate on him. I'm just like, dude, you could have been, you were going down as like a hero in Alabama lore, and then you leave for a Lamborghini. Again, more power to you. I don't get a Lamborghini and I don't have the choice. So I guess it's not fair for me to criticize. But back to the playoff thing for a second. It is interesting. Like, who would you pull for? Michigan, Ole Miss. 100% Ole Miss for me. 100%.
Ole Miss there. Ole Miss. For me, I'm with you. 100% Ole Miss there.
Oregon and Missouri. Again, I would pull for Missouri probably, but I'm still not on the Missouri's in the SEC train just yet. It's only been 12 years. It took me 20 years to make sure South Carolina and Arkansas were in here. So I need a little more Missouri time. It won't bother me one way or the other. But as far as Georgia, Ohio State goes, I respect the heck out of both programs. And I feel like both of them are great programs. And I wish they respected us a little more. It feels like they don't.
Well, everyone, I say this about Auburn, and you heard me say this, and you agree with this, Luke, every time I say it, but I think it goes beyond Auburn. Auburn, the reason that I think they take the attitude that they have recently about things is Auburn was convinced for years that as soon as Nick Saban retired, Alabama would be a mess, and that Alabama is finally gone and they could reestablish themselves as the top program. They have been waiting and waiting and waiting for Nick Saban to retire and assume their number one spot in the state. But the way it's played out so far has probably been a little shocking to Auburn fans in terms of DeBoer being so popular, DeBoer recruiting as well as he has. And I think Auburn fans are a little disappointed that Alabama hasn't fallen over dead, legs up in the air. I think the rest of the country is like that too, Luke. Not to the extent that Auburn is, but I think from around the country, the idea was, well, Alabama's Alabama, and there's nothing we can do about them. But one day Nick Saban will retire, and they'll come back down to earth. And I think that's what's going on out there. And a lot of schools assume that to be true. And they're not only assuming it to be true, they're wishing that it's true. They're hoping that it's true. But I think that's why there's a lot of anti-Alabama sentiment. That in their minds, they're like, okay, Saban retired, y'all are done. They don't want to wrap their arms around the idea that maybe the new guy will continue what Saban had built.
I'm glad you brought up recruiting because we're going to talk about that here in this next segment. Couple of quick recruiting notes before we get into another interesting article from your boys over there at On3 Bama Online. First of all, Turbo Rogers. Now the rumor was he was going to flip to Ohio State, and now Tom Loy has come out. By the way, Tom Loy. I mean, only Bo Nix has a shorter name than Tom Loy, but so
he has less than 2 syllables in his whole name.
That's nuts.
I think it's a 1 syllable.
It's almost just like you could say Tom Loy.
Tom Loy.
Anyway, he has said that, hey, look out for Auburn to flip Turbo Rogers again. And I caught some of Locked On Auburn a little bit earlier, and I saw Zach, who's a buddy of mine and a great person. He was talking about it, and he said Alabama fans will sell it as if they didn't want him anyway. I'm not saying that at all. That's first of all, that's not true. Secondly, let's also be honest. Turbo committed to the previous staff,
correct,
and this staff is taking a little bit more of a wait and see attitude.
Wait and see. Exactly,
and that's okay. And what if Turbo Rogers? I get to call Turbo Rogers, I believe, in the first game of the year. I believe they play Vestavia in the Kickoff Classic. I'm going to get to call that game, so I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see it.
He's one of my. I can't wait to see what he does this fall, and I think Alabama staff feels the same way. Look, Tim Watts, who we're about to talk about, one of Tim's articles that Tim recently put together on BOL, but Tim has been straight up with BOL members about the Turbo situation. He, like Luke said, he committed to the last staff. He didn't commit to this staff. There is a different relationship between this staff and Turbo, and this staff is very, very interested in Turbo. They want to see him play this fall. He is on the commitment list, on every public commitment list, because he is not publicly decommitted, but he committed to the last staff. In some ways, this is like Miles Johnson. In some ways, this situation is similar to the Miles Johnson situation, who, as we all know, wasn't recruited by this new staff and is going to Florida because he didn't have the opportunity at Alabama with this new staff. Turbo's situation is different than Miles, though. Alabama's new staff is very interested in Turbo. They would just like to see him play some games this fall. That's where we are. They also have AK Deer ranked ahead of Turbo, which should not be controversial to anyone because everybody's ranked ahead of him, and they would like to have AK Deer, and that will affect Turbo in terms of, does Turbo even want to be a second back in a class? Does Alabama want 2 backs in a class? So all of those things are factors here, and but anyone that says Alabama doesn't want Turbo Rogers is incorrect. That's not true. Alabama would like to evaluate Turbo Rogers. Anybody that says that Alabama's recruiting him just as hard as they're recruiting AK Deer, I mean, I don't think the facts show that that's
and they might eventually do that. And here's
correct. Luke's right.
Look, here's the other thing. It may cost them Turbo Rogers to not be, going all out for it.
They could get AK Deer, love what they see from Turbo this fall, and beg Turbo to be, hey, we want you in this class. We want you with AK Deer. And Turbo's like, y'all sign another back. I'll go somewhere else. That could easily happen.
And I got to say this too. I'm going to say it for the
By the way,
1,000th
Auburn's got another back too.
I'm going to say
Auburn's
this,
got another back too.
I'm going to say this for the 1,000th time. That again, I watched the Locked On Auburn thing. And I love Zach. He had a guest on that said, "Hey, I just don't understand. I still don't understand Auburn's philosophy." He was talking about our crossover and about the recruiting in state. He said it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why you'd pass up all these in-state guys. Bear Bryant once said, "You don't want guys from Alabama because they play harder for their state." Bear Bryant was coaching in the 70s and 60s, so things are different. And I'm going to say this for the 1,000th time. I want in-state guys. I want them. But if this staff is recruiting at the number 2 class in the country level, I cannot complain. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that in-state recruiting is not important. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's less important than it once was. And when you got the number 2 class, it's definitely not as important. That's all.
Yeah, you put it perfectly. It's exactly how I feel. I mean, anybody complaining, y'all would rather be ranked lower and have more in-state kids? Is that what y'all want? I mean, that seems crazy to me. I want the best players possible, and this staff's doing a great job of recruiting the best players possible. And as for Alabama evaluating in-state players and determining they didn't want them, all I will say is, well, let's see how good this staff is at evaluating talent. We won't really know for sure for 2 or 3 years. I get the feeling they're going to be pretty good at it. But, hey, I don't know. Let's see the players that they've evaluated and recruited, like Ryan Williams, for instance. Let's see if they turn out to be pretty good players. I feel like they probably will, and that the staff will prove to be good evaluators. But there are several highly ranked in-state players that this staff looked at and said, I don't think you're a great fit here. So we're going to go in another direction. And that's an opinion that they had, and that may or may not prove correct. Now,
Jimmy, since we've taken up all the time in something we weren't going to talk about, let's start with, you talked about your buddy Tim Watts. My buddy Tim Watts, good dude. He wrote an article about 5 guys that could rise in the rankings. 2 really caught my eye. Now, look, if he talks about Keelan Russell at the end, which is kind of cheating because he's already a 5-star. He brought up Luke Metz. I think we all know about Luke Metz. And he brought up Micah DeBose. And Micah DeBose is a guy who started out very high. He's fallen. He has a chance to get back up. That's true. But the 2 guys that I would like for you to talk quickly about are London Simmons and Latsier Brooks. He even makes mention that on 3's ranking, this is his terminology. He is criminally ranked at number 70 as in terms of wide receivers in the country. And I agree. I think in the end, Latsier Brooks should be in the top 100. Yeah, he said on 3's got him in top 100. Sorry. But
the other services.
Others have him in 70. I'm sorry. I screwed that up. My bad, Tim.
Yeah. Tim's been very high on Latsier Brooks, and On3's been high. For Latsier Brooks is very underrated by the recruiting industry, but On3's been ahead of the curve with him. They had him ranked high as a good national elite prospect way before everyone else, and I think he's going to continue to rise. The key with rankings during their senior year, Luke, they can rise some just based on senior year tape. That's going to help a lot of them, but what really gives you a shot in the arm is the National All-Star Games, when Charles Power and all the people responsible for rankings at all the sites are there in person evaluating you with your peer group. Boy, those National All-Star Games are great opportunities to beat. And that's where I think Latsier, guys like him can go up. London Simmons from Mississippi, his opportunity to rise in the rankings, probably Alabama Mississippi High School All-Star Game, which is an event on the national scale. People might be surprised to hear that. It's not the U.S. Army game. It's not the Under Armour game or whatever they call or even the Polynesian Bowl. But the Alabama Mississippi High School All-Star Game gets a lot of attention from the recruiting industry. And there will be significant people in the recruiting industry there watching those practices. So all those guys do have a chance to move up. I'm a huge Latsier Brooks fan. London Simmons, one last thing, because I know we got to get out of here. But London Simmons, interesting thing to me. He had something like 15 sacks and 20 tackles for loss last year playing high school football at 340. He's about to play his senior year at 305. And by the way, he plays small school, private school ball in Mississippi. Now 40 pounds lighter and more athletic, coming off a year of 15 sacks and 20 tackles for loss when he was sort of, to be unfair, overweight and slow. Now he's in killer shape and fast. He could absolutely rack up crazy numbers. And will that make him rise in the rankings? I don't know. It's private school Mississippi, and so it's fair for people to question, the competition. But we'll see how he does at the high school all-star game, because I think he's a slam dunk to be a part of that Mississippi high school all-star team.
All right, want to remind everybody, go check out Locked On College Football. Spencer, my main man over there, does an amazing job. You will love it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And until next time, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.